Regular meeting of the River Falls Board of Education. This meeting has been properly notified, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item is the hearing of visitors or delegations, but I don't think that there's anybody who has signed up to speak. So we are going to move right into informational items. And the first one is the Spotlight on Education for the Renaissance Charter Academy. And so I believe that we have Peggy and Jerry here. All right, welcome. Please come up. Absolutely.
Is there like a...
There's no longer a mic because we have these mics that will catch your sound, so you just have to speak normal. You should be good.
Knowing that
Maybe
everything will be
voice,
cut up, yes.
Teacher voice. Is there a laser on here? No. Oh, okay. That's fine. I was like, maybe that'd be cool to do, but. Okay, hello, I'm Jerry. I'm the school counselor at the Renaissance Charter Academy. This is the end of my third year at the Renaissance, and I'm here with Ms. Webb.
And I've been here for 1 year, so thank you for having us.
Yeah. We're excited to share with you, maybe. I did turn it on. Ooh, okay, I pushed the wrong arrow. That's fine. So we are gonna go over the 3 goals that we had overarchingly throughout the school year. So we broke it down into 3 categories. So we have our academic goal, a behavioral goal, and a community goal that we had at the Renaissance. We did this for a couple reasons. We have an extremely small staff, and in Peggy's first year, she worked with all of us, collaborated with all of us to kind of just talk about what direction we wanted to go as a staff for the Renaissance Charter Academy. So we broke it down into these 3, and we'll go over each one of them in our presentation today. I'm gonna get this right at some point.
I got it.
Okay, thanks. So our first one is our academic goal. So it is a modest goal. We said that each quarter, 100% of students will complete 1 book of choice. That was important, that it had to be their choice, not one assigned in the classroom. And that this was gonna be monitored by our library use data and then also our win time. The reason that we chose this goal is because this is our 2nd full year in our building that we have currently. I've been there 3 years, as I've said, and we've moved 3 times since I've been there. And so with that, our students have not had access to reading materials in a traditional way. There was no place for them to check out books, to go and see what they were interested in. So they were relying on some things that in other schools, they may have gotten just like that, and at the Renaissance, it was just kind of moving around all the time. We also wanted to leverage our advisory time or win time because it's 45 minutes that teachers have as a homeroom for their students. So we wanted to utilize that as a way to improve our literacy with our students. Our 9th and 10th graders, we can go to the next slide. Thank you for helping. Our 9th and 10th graders focused on more of those basic literacy skills because a lot of our 9th and 10th grade students that come to us at the Renaissance come to us in an alternative pathway. So a lot of our students who are younger are homeschooled. They may have been in treatment centers before. They may have been online in other districts or open enrolling with us. So we don't necessarily have that like traditional data that if they came to us from Meyer Middle School or straight from River Falls High School, we just have that ready to go and to look at. So that's why we kind of chunked out our students 9th and 10th grade, and then 11th and 12th grade, we focused on that books of choice, reading of choice, because they have not had access to a library when they've been our students before. So, yes, thank you. So yes. This is our beautiful library, yay! And just a cool plug for our program, our students made all those bookshelves and cabinets. And if you haven't been in our building and in our space, it's beautiful, it's absolutely beautiful. No, they don't take special orders, so sorry about that. We weren't able to get the data ready for this presentation here, but we are working with Mary Miller, our school librarian. She goes to lots of different areas, so we know she's busy. So we weren't able to get that library use data for the year in total from her yet, but we did have data of reading logs that were completed by our students 9th through 12th in our advisory period. So those reading logs were completed 2 times a week with their advisory advisory teachers. And then Read Theory was a supplemental program that we did for students 9th and 10th grade that really honed in on those literacy skills like I already talked about. And that was done 2 times a week as well.
The reading logs also contain strategies that students utilized when they were reading the books that they were reading for advisory.
I think I did that. Or did you do that?
I did that.
Oh, okay, sorry. It was just, we were so in sync. So here's some of the data that we got back specifically from Read Theory. So keep in mind, this is 9th and 10th grade. The green on there shows growth from term 3 to term 4. The red, you can see not growth. Can we go to the next slide? We're breezing through because we got 3 goals to get through. So, and then this integration of knowledge is the last section of the literacy goals that we had our students focus on in Read Theory. So you can see that, I'm going to start with the data that gave us pause. You can see that there was a little bit of fallback that happened in that integration of knowledge. The nice thing about having this data now is that we have our, again, first in my tenure at the Renaissance, we have a dedicated staff member who has been hired on for teaching English. So he is our English teacher. He's going to be working with 9th through 12th graders in literacy skills, English 9 through 12, American literature. So we're really excited about that. He's been taking all this data and then will inform his curriculum to mirror what the students need from this data. So he's been able to take what we have for him here and the reading logs that Ms. Webb mentioned, and he's going to be able to infuse what students need more support in, so this integration of knowledge especially, that's going to be hammered in this coming school year from Mr. Kallenbach. And then the plan for next year, the data there that gave us pause is that Read Theory is great, but we really do need to find something like FastBridge or STAR and make sure we work with our school psychologists to implement that and make sure that we're getting those data points for all of our students, not just the 9th and 10th graders. But some data to celebrate, so I want to celebrate, sorry. Some data to celebrate though is that 100% of our 9th and 10th graders, which is our biggest cohort of students, is our underclassmen. There's almost 20 of them total, and so they 100% participated. I don't know if they loved it, but they participated and did it and followed through with it. So that was really great to see. They rose to that ask. And then there was overall growth in all those 3 main areas of literacy that we had them focus on. Okay, your turn.
You can just click.
She's got it.
All right, our second goal for our program this year was the cell phone policy. We kind of decided in 2023 that is something that we wanted to move forward as a building whole after listening to staff say, oh my gosh, we create these wonderful lessons and engaging lessons and we have this all the time. And so collectively we sat down and we're like, look, let's just move it forward and we're going to implement a no cell phone policy for the 24-25 academic year, and we had fantastic support. So we looked at what the staff were saying, and we actually listened to what some of the students were saying, and we were going to when we were looking at the data, we're like, how do we determine if we're being successful? We were going to monitor our cell phone usage by Infinite Campus and the number of write-ups that we had in 2024, 2025. We didn't have any data in 2023, 2024, just because we didn't have an active cell phone policy in place. But when we looked at the qualitative data from 22, 23, and 23 and 24, we all just agreed, like, this has got to stop because we've just got bed rot in the head. Just, you all know, I just don't even need to go any further on that. And then we decided that we're going to move forward with the policy with administration taking the heavy on any infractions that happened to be brought to my attention. And we just agreed that cell phones were super distracting in the classroom, and after implementing it, we had some really great outcomes, and you'll see that on the next slide. So we went from put it in your locker to the first violation. The second violation is it goes to the office, and then on the third day, the third time you get caught with your cell phone in class, is a 5-day surrender to the office, which they had to surrender their phone to Miss D in their little cell phone jail. And as the picture depicts right there, you can see our students in the past have not had really good attendance. Engagement when we had speakers or staff presenting, and you can see this picture. I was in there, and this was Pierce County Public Health coming in, and students are paying attention. They're not on their cell phones just because they're no longer allowed in the classrooms. I'm ready for the next one, thank you. So this is the data that we had in term 1, Holy Buckets. We had 32 violations, and remember, we started with about 40, so everybody come to the table with at least one, put that back in your locker. I'm not gonna lie, after I was hired for this position, I actually lost sleep on how I was going to impose the sanctions, because I didn't know what kind of buy-in I was gonna get from families, and I didn't know what kind of pushback I was gonna get from students, and overall, we had fantastic support of staff, 100%, and even after we kind of got down to the nuts and bolts of as to why the cell phone policy needed to be put into place, we got buy-in from our students. So as you can see, term 1, we had 1 surrender for 5 days. Term 2, we went from 32 down to 11 with another 5-day surrender. Term 3, we crushed it with 5, and then term 4, we had an uptick. Well, this first thing we're going to celebrate is that everybody bought in, and we just really thought it was fantastic. And when we had guest speakers come in, they would say, "Oh, your students did a fantastic job paying attention." And then it was a great learning opportunity for our new staff. Now, don't take offense to any of this, but we had, don't take offense, but we had 3 new staff members. And when I say 3, we had a student teacher, we had a long-term sub that just finished his schooling this year, and then we also hired Mitchell Kallenbach. So we had 3 very new staff members under our umbrella to kind of move this policy forward, and that can be kind of a crapshoot when you're looking at young people to enforce technology, because they've kind of grown up with it, but they were fantastic in moving our agenda forward. For term 4, we saw an uptick up to 12. And I attribute that, I'm speculating, because when I looked at the person that wrote up the violations, it was our long-term sub. And so what our students were doing is they were pushing the envelopes on somebody who was no longer in the classroom to see if they could get him to budge, and he did a fantastic job just sticking to his guns. And I kept saying, "It'll get better, it'll get better." He kept
You say it long enough.
You say it long enough, it becomes the
Then
truth.
it's the end of the year.
Exactly, so. And I just want to say that I thought the cell phone policy was fantastic this year, so I'll yield the floor to the third goal.
You're starting.
Oh, that's right. For our third and final goal, we continue to want to grow the program. We have realized that the River Falls community supports the program, and now we just want to grow it to its fullest capacity. And so our goal is to increase our body by 10%, and to participate in at least 4 community events, and increase collaborations with Myra Middle School and the River Falls High School. You can click to the next one. And was this one you?
No, you.
Okay, perfect. So we just want to keep moving forward, that the Renaissance is not the same program it was 20 years ago. It's not even the same program it was 5 years ago. So we got to keep moving the agenda forward, that we are a school of choice for the River Falls community, and that if you don't fit into a traditional academic setting, maybe the Renaissance Charter Academy is something that your family could consider, and maybe have some success with that. We know that we have positive, glowing reviews from families. They are in this together when their students don't want to come to school, and it really kind of takes a community effort to get their kids across the stage for graduation. And so they're grateful. I mean, we have a lot of fantastic emails that come through. We have a lot of tears that come through, and they're just eternally grateful for the program that our district has to offer.
Sorry. Yeah, so we took a look, we'll go into the data right after this, but we took a look at our student growth that includes transfers from RFHS to RCA, and then also open enrollments that came in. We went into some of our community events that we attended out in the community, but then also hosted, because we do have a brand new beautiful building, and we want to make sure we showcase it and show off the things that our students have partnered with their teachers in making, like you saw in the library space area, but also it's just a nice, clean, open space for people in the community to come and enjoy. And then, like Peg said, partnering with Myra and River Falls High School. You can go to the next one. So on the left side here, there's the student enrollment that you can see from term. So we we exceeded our goal moderately, modestly, 14.2% growth from term 1 to term 4. So we're really excited about that. There was some steady enrollment, slower than I think Peg and I were kind of go-getters. We wanted, even more exponential growth, but we'll take what we can get. And we, like Peg said, we saw the students coming in and worked with the families, and we know that good growth means we have to put a lot of time and intention into it. We also have support from other schools, so opening that partnership with Meyer, continuing a partnership with River Falls High School has been very beneficial because we can't get any new student enrollment if we're not partnering with our neighbors in the grades up, above us, below us, and at the same that we need. And then there's a lot more general curiosity from the community that we've been really excited about. I think having a new building really helps with that. So again, we are super appreciative of the support of the school board and the community for that, because our building is really awesome. And people are like, what is that? Is that a warehouse? And then they come in and they're like, oh, it's a school. This looks amazing. And some pause data is that even though we do get a lot of people curious and coming in and wondering about our program, whether they're a potential student and family or they're just a community member, there still is that stereotype that we're a last resort school, that all kids that come to us do drugs and they're bad and they're just going to juvie. So that is something that we are very persistent in making sure that we're gently pushing against, but also showing and showcasing what our students do and who they are and why they're so amazing and should be supported by the community. Other piece of data, community events, attended 6, hosted 8, and then had 6 events between Meyer and RFHS that we collaborated with the staff in being a part of. So we're really excited about that partnership as well with the community and the schools.
So the events that we attended was the drug impairment training, paraprofessional training for educational professionals, the Truancy Summit. We did an event at the River Falls Public Library for mental health. We had fantastic participation at the school forest for tree planting. The craft fair was a huge hit, and then with Mr. Weiss and Mr. Stapleton working really hard to get that ACE hardware partnership, and they just keep making more stuff to send down to the hardware store, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, so the hosted events, we are going to be having a STEM camp, I believe it's through Community Ed, in August. We had Pierce County Reproductive Health come in, the Lions Club has hosted meetings with us, the AAUW has hosted meetings with us. We have a running hosting event with Pierce County Parent Education coming in once a month that we're really excited about. So they rent out our common space and then they rent out one of our classrooms. So they get to use that. St. Croix Valley SART, if you're not familiar with them, they work with RFHS and us, and they're great community partners. Teen Mental Health First Aid is being hosted through there, and I have a new lead for hosting youth mental health first aid at the Renaissance this coming year, and then Abundant Yoga in River Falls as well. So that's just from this year, and we're really excited about that.
We just think the more people that we can get exposed to our building, the more it gets them talking, and then it just kind of popcorns throughout the entire community, which is why we're so excited to invite people into our space. And as we continue to move forward towards our growth, we're just going to make sure that we're being diligent and vigilant about our technology use in regards to cell phones, but then also, prioritizing the technology that Mr. Weiss and Mr. Stapleton have utilized in their classrooms and through their curriculum. And Ms. Muller and Mr. Hollenbach will continue to work for the different assessments for literacy and such. I don't know if you know this, but Ms. Muller has a background in English language arts as well. That's why she's really encouraged in moving our goals and moving forward, and then continuing to just partnership and other events with the high school and continuing to utilize our space in the best way that we know how.
Any questions? Thanks for listening to us.
What's our capacity at the building?
100 is what we were told, but I
I
think
think realistically it was 70. When we look at the student to staff ratio within the charter, it's 70 with the current staffing that we have.
Is that?
So we'd have 100 for the buildings, 70
Right,
for the staff.
Right, I'm saying that, yeah. So there's room to grow.
there is, yeah.
What we would have liked to have said tonight is like, we need a referendum to build another space for the rec center.
Next year.
We're just gonna keep hammering out that we've got a great space and an opportunity for students to be successful that may not have found success in other educational settings. So it's been a pleasure working with the high school as well, so thank you for all of that.
One of the things that we know well on the board is that our financial resources tend to run out before our ideas run out. I am really glad that we are able to fund the program that the two of you are leading. This is critically important if we are going to meet the need to have appropriate learning environments for all of our students. So thank you for the work that you do. This is critically important for these kids. So I hope, Jerry, are you able to connect with folks at the middle school so that families recognize that this really is a good option for some kids who need a smaller space?
That's something that I started last year with,
Good.
working with the counseling team. So Sam Dusek, because they do grade rotation. So Sam Dusek and I partnered last year to kind of get a list of students that might be good candidates. And then this year, we partnered with the big high school and Meyer, so Jordan Seifert, to actually present to all students with kids and the counseling team about the two choices that they do have. And then Peg went with a student representative to conferences, I believe,
Conferences at
at Meyer. So that is slowly rolling up, and I think we're just gonna keep growing because we've gotten great support from Meyer for that too. Because I think before, it was not really a pathway to start at the Renaissance as a freshman. But we're finding that when students start with us, it's very successful for them, and they can actually find success first, right away with us, and it doesn't have to be that last resort. And again, that's just rewriting the narrative, you know,
Right.
so, yeah,
That's what I was going to say. That's the way the narrative is going to shift.
yeah.
So, also, I think you were very courageous to take on the no cell phone policy. Good for you.
It's all Peg, she's wonderful.
Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes we have to do the really hard things because we know it's going to make a difference for our kids, and it sounds like you did it.
I would say the overall thing that we're most pleased about is that a year ago, when we would walk into the common space, there would be nobody talking. And like now, when we walk into the common space, students are chatting, and they're laughing, and they're playing games, and they're being 100% present. And one of another favorite comment that I've overheard staff say is that I actually now have to tell students to be quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop talking to each other.
Yes, so, it's been really good, and the staff have been fantastic, so appreciate this.
Along
That's
those lines,
great.
I'm just really pleased to hear that you did find buy-in from families and students. Maybe it took a little bit of time, but I think that's some of the reluctance initially to like forge into that ground in making a big drastic change like as you're not just quite sure how it's going to go out, but it sounds like through some good conversations and honest conversations about why you're doing this. We want to protect our instructional time. We want to prioritize that social interaction with kids, and we see this as a staff as something that is preventing us to deliver the highest education possible, that eventually students and families did come around and they now see the value in that difficult decision that you all made. And the fact that you were all in it together and everyone was on the same board, I suspect that had a lot to do with your success. That's critical,
Yeah,
so
that's really huge.
well done.
Yeah.
You know, we're really proud of this program, and I think because, in part because it's so unique. And in fact, in your presentation tonight, it's been obvious to us all year, Peggy, that your leadership is making a real difference. So really appreciate what you've done and what you're doing, taking on these things, and Jerry and the other staff for being able to connect well with her, and obviously you're working well together, and that's a great sign for our kids.
Good cup, bad cup.
We're
It's okay.
we're the sum of our parts.
I just say I feel dead inside.
She's not dead inside.
So as we move ahead with this, and this is so unique, I think there are people in the community who take it for granted. Either they're unfamiliar with it and take it for granted, or they're very familiar with it and take it for granted. But this is really unique, and it occurred to me when you were talking is, I know when Kit's up here, we talk to him a lot about what are our peer institutions, who are you benchmarking again, what's New Richmond doing, what's Ellsworth doing, whatever our peer programs are. Do we have such a thing for the Renaissance Academy? Were you able to benchmark against anything? Do we have a peer
We don't
program?
have anything like this. When I was doing my administrator certification, the instructors from UW-Madison said, I do not know why the River Falls model is not the statewide model for alternative education. So that spoke volumes when I was sharing about the program. But when we look at the other alternative education programs that are in the area, it's school within a school or a night school. It doesn't have anything like River Falls has to offer.
All the more reason to get the Deputy Secretary of Education, Superintendent of Public Instruction up here sometime soon, just to sort of see this. But anyway, I appreciate that, appreciate this information tonight. Keep it up.
Well, and we can see that stats in our graduation rate, the fact that we have this compared to other districts, so it's good.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. All right, we are going to move on to reports, and the first reports that we have are our school resource officer annual reports. So welcome.
Talk about good cops, bad cops.
Brian,
Nailed it.
I was gonna go fast. So I'm Officer Brian Justin. I've been in the school district for cheapers. I just completed my 7th year. This was my first year of transitioning into the middle school and elementary school. Overall, I think it went really well. I got to meet a lot of new staff and a lot of new students, which was great. I was involved in a lot of health classes, talking about drug education, alcohol. The health teacher came up to me at the end of the year and said, hey, just to let you know, I did a survey with the students, and overwhelming, they said they'd like to see you more in classrooms. So that's awesome. That was a good feeling. So we are kind of looking into maybe do like online safety scenario with the students and stuff. Adam and I just went through our school resource officer convention last week, and there were some nice AI presentations and stuff. I'm hoping to put some of that into my presentations. Otherwise, 5th grade safety patrol, that was a big thing to work with and deal with. Now I see what Officer G dealt with, which is crazy. But a lot of organization, I should say. It really, when you work together and see that and trying to establish the picnic in the movie, you just realize how great this community is to volunteer their time, and our PTOs also helping out with financial burden can be the most picnic and things of that nature. But our community really stepped up and definitely appreciates our school district a lot to be able to do it. Oh,
I don't know why it keeps popping off.
there you go. Well, like I said, it was great to work with, everybody, Patax, River Falls Movie Theater, Westwind, I'm going to forget some people, Best Made Cookies, a bunch of other great businesses around here. Just really it was a lot of fun that way. And I think the only movie, I've heard a lot of good reports with that. I talked to some students around that. Picnic was towards the end of the year, so I didn't get a chance to really talk with a lot of the students there. I remember the last day I was chasing a bear around, because we had a bear around only about like a block and a half away from our 6th grade, as well as some of our 4th grade.
Everyone was safe, though. Let's not get any misinformation. Everyone was safe.
Over by Glen Park. I had some great pictures if anyone wants to see them. I went over there.
Spotted at the Sycamore. He was sitting on the edge of a bed.
Oh, really?
We saw the thing on Facebook. They take pictures of bears at all the different businesses.
It's crazy. Where I saw it was in a fenced-in backyard of a tree, and I got some pictures of that, and the bear's looking right at me. DNR got a lot closer than I would want to, but as the DNR got closer to the bear, it would start growling at it. And so it was kind of crazy, but I talked to the guy. I said, I'm going to give you my personal cell phone number. If it goes one way, I need to know. If it goes the other way, I need to know, because I have people on both sides. Okay, I'll keep eyeing things. I appreciate it. So,
What was
you
the
have my personal
resolution?
number.
Did they get the bear out?
So my neighbor is actually the guy that takes care of nuisance animals. He's a subcontract for the DNR. And so he was already on a call moving another bear to another different location. But because there's a lot of, because of like farmland and population and everything else like that, we just happen to have a lot of that around here. So therefore, moving the bear, in this location, you have to really move it up way up north to drop it off. So on the way back, I talked to him, spoke with him briefly, just with my neighbor. I said, hey, did you get a chance to look at the bear? He goes, yep, I'm hoping by nighttime it's gone. I said, it looks pretty young, like a year or 2 years. He goes, yeah, I think it's a year and a half. I think mom just kicked him out and he doesn't know what to do. And so he's just wandering around trying to figure things out. And I'm like, okay. So we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt tonight. And hopefully by nightfall, he'll go in the woods and won't see him again. So I'm like, all right. So that was my understanding anyway. So yeah. So any questions there?
Do you know when the safety patrol program started?
That's a good question. I don't know. That was before Officer G's time too, as well. So it's been around for a long time.
Since I can.
Since you were a patrol?
Well, before that. It's awful, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember,
We went to, up to Willow River State Park. That was the, right, that
that's where we went this year too. It still is.
Go to
It still
Willow
is.
River?
Yes. But, so
Did that
my
in
understanding that
1978.
Linehan was one of the officers that planned that.
Right. It
And
actually
him
goes
and-
back to John Dinkle was the,
Okay, yeah.
Officer Dinkle was.
Yeah, okay, yeah. My understanding that what they do is to grab a bunch of charcoal and boil water and boil the hot dogs that way. I learned from Chris, it's a lot easier just to have gas, and that's how we cook. So we just bring the gas up there, and hot dogs are done in no time flat, so, which is nice, so yeah.
Get them fed.
Well, Brian,
Yeah. So it's just, it's a lot of work. I mean, investigator Ryan Miller helped me out with that too, which was great. He had a daughter there too as well, so involved in the safety patrol, so it's just kind of fun that, daughter gets to see him in a different type of light too as well, so.
It's a great program and it's really fun. I take my kids to and from school every day. So it is just another way for our fifth graders to be bolstered in their confidence and their leadership at the building, and to recognize that they have an additional set of responsibilities being the oldest at the school. It's
For
fun
sure.
to see them out there, particularly like the crossing guards and those that are out there, really serious jobs. To see them out there confidently, helping kids cross the street, it's wonderful.
And they
It's
take their
really-
job serious.
And they're out there when
Yeah.
it is so cold and
Wet.
windy and rainy and miserable, and
Yes.
yet they get the job done. So we're very fortunate to have that program, and it serves our kids very well.
Yeah, I agree totally. And it's fun, it's because during the safety patrol, I'll try to go hit all the schools up, like throughout the week. I try to hit one school, like one day in another school, and try to get all the elementaries throughout that week. But one of the things I do is the safety patrol will come in, I'm like, hey, how's it going today? How did it go? Oh, good. You ain't in trouble? Any issues? No. I'm like, all right, we'll keep up the good work, just try to connect with them a little bit.
Because I wanted to mention something about safety patrol too, because it's so critical, and it's such a responsibility. I mean, when you're driving around town during those hours and you see those kids out there helping kids across the street, and you realize kind of how dangerous that is generally. I mean, it really is good that it goes so far. But as you're saying this, it occurs to me that this might be something as the year starts. You know how we're always conscious about trying to put out information about school buses and the stop signs and don't pass the school bus. We have to do something. You guys should do a video about the safety patrol. Who are they? What are they doing? For people in town, pay attention to them, watch that kind of thing. I think the people in the community would be real receptive to seeing what those kids are doing and appreciate what they're doing, but also just a reminder to everybody that these kids take their job very seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
mind them.
Anyway, I think that would be a
Helpful
good
reminder
idea.
for sure. 100%.
Well, Brian, thank you. As I read through your report also, it seems to me that the theme that goes through everything is relationships.
Oh, for sure,
And
yeah.
that's really important. That's what our vision is, and so thank you for upholding that. And we've had a lot of school resource officer reports, and we've never heard about bears before. So this is very unique. You have the, yes. So, all right.
Yeah,
So,
you bet. Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Adam, you are next.
I'm gonna apologize now, I have no bear stories, so. So I'm Officer Morrow with the River Falls Police Department. This was my first year in the high school, so I took over for Brian. So I got to spend a little bit of last year, I think I started in April at the high school, and was just able to see what he did and all that stuff. And then last year, we also too attended the SRO conference. So even though school ends on Friday of June 6th, we spent last week at the SRO conference. So it's just a good networking because it's a Wisconsin-based one, so there's 2 SRO conferences you can attend. So there's a national one, which is, I think this year was in Phoenix, Arizona, and then there's also a Wisconsin one. So it's good just to get with the Wisconsin guys, just to see how other SROs in different parts of the state do things. It's a good networking. We go out, we attend little things here and there throughout the day. And then, so now we fast forward to when school started. So first off, before I say anything, I just wanted to say thank you to this staff right here, Kit, Lisa, Heidi, Peg. They kind of, we laid the foundation at the beginning of the year and what the expectations were when it came to the students. And I think we did a pretty good job of what the expectations were. I think just because of having a new SRO at the high school, everyone was kind of wondering, well, what's this guy gonna do? type deal, right? So I truly believe in everyone's an adult, or they training to be an adult in high school, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna treat kids like adults. So throughout the year, we did football games, basketball games, wrestling matches. Also want to say special thank you to my counterpart, Brian Jensen, because even though I couldn't be at some because I'm still in the National Guard back home, he stepped up and was still able to attend those activities. That way, a police officer could be present there for the students, and they were probably happy to see him in face too, so why not? And then after that, yeah, it was mainly working with staff, being in the classrooms. Also too, I also did some alcohol and vaping things. I think it's an eye-opening experience when kids start to realize how much money vaping and all that stuff, or even being caught with alcohol is. I know we teach that from a young age all the way up to high school, but now that they can be held accountable when they get into high school, and they see that $70 citation, how much it goes up and up and up in price, I think that kind of is a hindrance of getting kids to stop it. And then my big event this year was the mock car crash this year. So the mock car crash happens over at the hockey rink. So we invite, Alina, the fire department, the police department helps with it. We tried to get a helicopter this year. I know they have been successful in the past at doing it, but unfortunately we weren't able to because they had a real world emergency, so they had to go do that literally like 10 minutes before it started. So they weren't able to come. But once again, it's a good eye-opening experience to have just how much work goes into it and all the resources that take the time to come and actually help with it. We also have a,
I'm gonna get 81.
there we go. We also have a mother of a child who was killed by drunk driving that usually comes in and talks. So it's a very eye-opening experience for the students to actually get the firsthand account of a parent who has actually been affected by that. Prom was amazing this year. Senior night was also another big thing. Senior night is kind of like the last night where we can, I guess, like really have a good time and interact with the kids. Because on graduation day, none of them want to see me. They want to get out of there as quickly as they possibly can. So you say congratulations in the beginning and then let them go about their business afterwards. And then, yeah, that's it. It was a very good year. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the relationships that I built with not only the students, but definitely the staff and parents. And I'm definitely looking forward to next year. So any questions for me?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and that's to say that I noticed in your written report that you were talking about being proactive, and I think of how important that is with our students, particularly at the high school level, to prevent things. So it also seems as if you were able to, I mean, it's a lot to take on in your first year, to come into a school and to understand the culture and to match that, so thank you.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that if all school districts had the kind of experience that we have with our school resource officers, everybody would want them.
Yeah,
So
being
thank you to both
proactive
of you.
it's what I do. Even back home when I was a cop in Massachusetts, I came from a city of over 100,000 people, so I love being proactive. I told myself I was never going to be the cop that just sat in the corner of a parking lot and did nothing. Like, that wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to be out in the public and wanted to go ahead and show face to everyone. That way people know that I'm here. I think that's the one thing I love from staff, is hearing from staff is, man, I rarely ever see you in your office. And that's because I don't want to be in my office unless I have to be in my office. If I have to write a citation, do a report, or whatever it is, that's really the only time you're ever going to really see me in my office. Other than that, I think I can probably clock 10,000 steps a day walking around the school, just being a face that the kids can see, knowing that, okay, Officer Morrow's in the hallways, then we're good. We got nothing to worry about. So I hope that's the perception that I give to the students and to the staff. So
That's great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
This is a really good program for us, and I often marvel at the state level. There's constant There seems to be constant talk about legislation requiring school districts to have SROs, these kinds of things. For us, it just seems so natural and works so well that that's a testament to the work you guys and your predecessors have done, and to this community, and to the police department and the city here that we partner with. And we're so appreciative of the city and their leadership in helping partner with these. It always strikes me that your work is interesting, and this is not that much difference, I guess, in terms of what you're supposed to do than police officers generally, but your work is both prevention as well as intervention, right? And you need to be prepared you need to be doing both at the same time. I was really struck this last weekend with assassination and events that happened in the Twin Cities over the weekend, of the positive interventions that happened from local police forces that didn't make that a much larger tragedy than it was. And I just think these are the kinds of things in a community, even like our school, it's what are the positive interventions? What are the kinds of things that happen? And I think we as a board have a lot of trust in you. The district has a lot of trust in you too, and the work that you do, because we know that first and foremost you're involved in prevention. But when the time comes for intervention, we trust that you'll be there. You'll be the people running into the building. You'll be the people looking out for our students and those kinds of things. And it's an awesome responsibility, and we're glad you've taken it on. So, thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you both very much for being here. All right. Okay, we'll see. We are going to move on to administrative reports, and the first thing is we're going to be looking at WIGs at the secondary level, and we will start with Meyer Middle School. And Mark and Kat, I believe you're up.
All right, well, good evening. I guess for people at home, my name is Mark Chapin. I'm the principal at Meyer Middle School, and with me is Kat Swanson. And I just wanted to do a quick shout out for Kat. She's been an invaluable addition to our staff. She took the time to build connections and relationships with her staff, to build that trust up, and she built that trust up very, very quickly because of those relationships and because of her expertise. And so I just can't thank her enough.
Thank you.
All right, you can go to the next slide. Is it working?
Why don't you just try it?
Yeah. So our goal that we strive for this year is that 90% of our students would be proficient on 80% of the standards measured by the end of the year assessment. So all of our core teachers created an assessment aligned to our priority standards. We had a mid-year and an end-of-year assessment. And so this particular goal ties really nicely and is really relevant to our strategic plan, which is holding high expectations for student learning. It also is really relevant to the work we're doing around standards-based grading. And we have been also tracking forward data for going on 9 years now. And one of the things we noticed and recognized was this disconnect between the results on our forward exam and our traditional grading system. So we rolled it out this year, and it was challenging to say the least, but we're really proud of the work that our staff is doing around standards-based grading. Some of the data too, I mentioned the forward trend data. I'm not going to open this up just to keep this moving along. If you have time and you want to look, we have been tracking this data for a very long time. Slides 5 and 6 in particular. Slide 5 tracks our cohort data over the last, the classes that have come through, looking at that growth. Slide 6, when you open it up, compares Alan mentioned the benchmarks to other districts. Hudson, Richmond, Osceola, every 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, tracking ELA and math, that 30,000-foot view. Slide 25 has got a breakdown of all of ours broken down by standard from the forward exam, so we can identify which standards we need to work on, which ones we're doing well on. That helped us with our curriculum review cycle as well, looking at that information. And then same thing with our math on slides 26, 27, and 28. It has all that information that we've been tracking this data for a very long time. You guys want to take out a piece of paper? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. If you want to click on the link, I thought it'd be interesting. We didn't do this the first time around. This is an 8th grade assessment at the end of the year. You can scroll down. So it's broken down by house, student name, section that they're in, and then in the parentheses, those are the different standards. I don't have the answer key, so I can't help you. I think one of the challenging things that, Kat was really instrumental in helping teachers with collecting this data and analyzing the data. And I think some of the tricky part to this, maybe you want to talk about it, but I'll let you go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
The data collection part is very time consuming. You have, for example, this 8th grade group, the science teachers have 18 priority standards, which is a lot. And some revisions do need to happen. But when you have 140 students and 18 priority standards, you're looking at every student to 18 standards, and that takes a long time to collect that data. You can use spreadsheets and formulas and try to find programs online, but there's all these roadblocks that get in the way. Maybe you have to pay for the program that's going to do the collection for you, or the formulas aren't working, or it's an extension you have to add. All these things kept happening, so it was very time consuming. I wanted to take that off the teacher's plate, so I offered to do the data collecting for them, just because it may have taken me an hour, but that would have been a whole week of prep for a teacher. So I wanted to do that to support them. But even looking back and looking at the time I spent on that was probably not the best use of even my time, thinking of how much that was. So we do need to put a system in place to try to streamline that collection of the data, and I have ideas for it. So that's one of my goals this summer, is to think of ways that we can do that a little bit more efficiently, because it's a lot. So for the end of the year assessment, we had 111 standards to analyze.
You can go back to your slide. Our commitments to our lead measures include our weekly PLC meetings. Kat was, again, really, I don't know how many you attended each. Every Thursday were our meetings, and we had them spread throughout the day, and you probably got as many as you could on Thursdays, so being a big support there. One of the things I think we could do a better job on next year is being a little bit more consistent with the common data protocols, and I think we have some ideas in place for that for next year. One thing we were really proud of is our assessment calendar. It was really, really fun for me to go into a 7th grade language arts teacher's classroom and see the learning target up in Gold House, and then go in the Blue House, it's the same learning target. Or if I walk in and they're given the same assessment within a day or two. That takes a lot of communication, a lot of collaboration, so that's something that we're really proud of.
And that's really helpful for special ed teachers as well. So they can look at the assessment calendar and see what assessments are happening that week for their students in what classes.
We're going to get into these, we're going to highlight some of these, but these are just for your reference if you want to look at these. So the top link was from the mid-year data. The second link was all of the data from the growth that we see from mid-year to end of the year. And then the data tracking template we'll talk about. Kat will actually talk about that. This is new too. I didn't do this the first time around, but I was really curious. So I took all of the percentages of students scoring proficient on each of the standards for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for each subject area. And you can see that the averages where our students were proficient. So with ELA, so that's just mostly the writing standards. 56% of our students were proficient, literature 73%, and you can just go on down the line. I did combine ELA and Lit because they are combined on the 4 exam. I just want to do a comparable there as well.
So this is the data that's connected to our WIG goal, which is 90% of students will be proficient on 80% of the standards, and I always have to stop and think about that. So what you're looking at in the column that is green, that is showing that 90% of our students were proficient by the end of the year on 26% of the standards, and that's 111 standards. When we gave the mid-year assessments, 90% of our students were proficient on 14.5% of the standards, roughly about half of that, so 62. We did not reach our target, but we expected that because this year we had no baseline data. We were developing the assessments, which on its own took quite a bit of time. You can use all the tools, you can use AI, but even using AI effectively is a skill within itself, and teachers have not been trained on how to do that. So building the assessments on their own was a really heavy lift. But now we have that baseline data, and we have data protocols, and we're going to talk about that this summer and try to start next year looking at all of that. But even though we didn't meet that target, we do have data to celebrate. We have 70% of our students were proficient on 71% of the standards, which is still really great. And then social studies and science, our students did really well, which is pretty standard in secondary. So 80% of the standards were proficient on 26 out of 27 standards in social studies. And those are very skill-based. The standards are not very content-heavy. And then 70% of the students were proficient on 28 out of 40 standards in science. Those are very dense. Those standards are a lot. We also had a lot of growth. So if you're looking at, yes, we're looking at proficiency, but we should also look at the growth, and that's important too. So language arts, for example, in those classes that those teachers are focusing on the writing standards and the language standards, they did not have the greatest proficiency, but they had by far the greatest growth. And that is incredibly valuable and something worth celebrating. So 87.5% growth is amazing. So we should definitely give them credit for that. This is how we collected the data. So we have been keeping track on spreadsheets. We have all of their priority standards for every teacher on the spreadsheet. We collect it at the mid-year time. We did it by class, how many students were proficient, and then we have the standard again, looking at the end of year assessment, how many were proficient that time, and we're able to do that direct comparison. And then we'll keep doing this the next 2 years, and we'll do it on the same spreadsheet, so we have that data over time.
You talk about labor intensive. I was gonna take a picture of my desk right now, because I must have, I don't know, how many purple Post-it notes, and every purple Post-it note has a grade level for content with a ton of numbers on it, and then, so we had to figure out because my eyes were kind of bugging out after a while.
For sure. So with that data, we now have a really good starting place for the next school year. So we need to respond to it. And the best way to do that is with the data protocols that we had mentioned, which is essentially agreed upon steps that our PLC members will go through to make decisions on what to do instructionally with that data. So you will come together as a team, look at your data, talk through it, and then start making decisions on, well, what worked and what didn't work. And now what do we do tomorrow? What do we do the next week with that data? Sometimes that can feel like one more thing to do as a teacher, and that's important for us to make sure that we approach that carefully and thoughtfully, and just remind teachers that you're doing this anyways. You're looking at data anyways. That's natural for teachers. A lot of times, though, we make decisions just off of our gut because we just know, and we do it, and we're probably not wrong. But you want to keep track of that and document that so that you can better support your students down the road. Because once you document it, you can look at those patterns over time, and then when you're advocating for student needs, you can say, well, look, we've talked about this, and this isn't working in this, or this is working. So we need to put value in the data protocols and hopefully have buy-in from the staff.
All right, so next steps for us. One is just to review the rigor of our mid-year and end-of-year assessments. Again, writing those assessments are tricky. Getting them aligned to the standards is challenging. So that's the first thing. Our grade level colleagues, department colleagues will be reviewing the end-of-year assessment data to identify strengths and areas for growth. And that includes having discussions about what's working and what's not working. That's happening already in our collaboration time. But we find out that there's some standards the teacher did really well on, and maybe the other teacher didn't. So let's have a conversation about what's working and what's not working. The other thing we want to do is take a look now at how our kids did by standard on the forward exam compared to how they did on the mid and end of year assessment. So trying to connect those dots as well. And then finally, designing, one of our goals for next year is designing a common form of assessment with a response day built in as well. Lastly, things we're most proud of this year is the hard work of our staff. This has been a 3-year, like I said, it's been 3 years in the making, and it's been a lot of work. And just our keen focus on student learning. One thing that was really, really fun to see, and I know this is a lot of work for our teachers, but the individual feedback, when I see Leah Fletcher or Jenny Lickey passing back an assessment that has 6 questions on it, align each standard with a score for each standard with feedback, that takes an incredible amount of time. And kids it's dialed in. It's by student, by standard, and that's uniquely challenging, but it's a great way for our kids and our staff to know exactly where our kids are at in their learning. And the high levels of collaboration happening at the PLC, it's just what we do now. It's just part of our culture, and I think it's a really cool thing, and having the support of Kat there has been great. And then I mentioned the alignment of our scope and sequence, but I can come into a classroom and know that within a day or two, I can see the same learning target and they're getting the same assessments. So really proud of our staff. Questions?
So tell us about the data, because, getting the data and being able to put it in a way that is useful, that is not going to take sticky notes and all of your time. Because all of the, I mean, the WIGs are based on being able to report data, to be able to show growth. So we have to be able to do that. Now, I thought that we bought, I mean, don't we have EduClimber or something like that? That doesn't help you?
EduClimber isn't.
What do you need is, I guess, the question to get this done.
There are a couple programs Amy and I are investigating, but EduClimber does not collect by student, by standard data.
And there's things that I've been looking at and learning more about and practicing and making some sample assessments, and I'll keep doing that. I'll then have to convert all of those assessments to that, but I'm willing to spend time to do that if it makes the data collection smoother, because counting is just tedious and not something we want to be doing. The other idea we've thought about is having students be involved in it as well. So if we can create a student reflective component to it, so they are looking at their score and they're analyzing it and then maybe doing like error analysis or responding to their own data, they essentially can kind of do part of it with us. So I'm thinking on it.
Using Google Forms is great, but when you have 3 questions based on the same standard and trying to get that, there's still a human factor that has to do some of that scoring.
Well, and counting.
It took me a day to do it. Like, to me, I'll do that for a day. It's just, it is labor intensive, but if I need to take a day to do it, I'll do it. If there's not a resource out there. It sounds like it was a lot, but it wasn't like she spent way more time on looking at the assessment part. I was just doing the overall tallies and totals, so.
The challenge for both the middle school and the high school with their data collection is the repeated opportunities students get to prove their learning. So we're looking for evidence of their learning multiple times. It's not a one time and done. They're doing it at the middle school, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. So it's not each one of us have one test, each one of us have 3 tests, and then multiply that by 250, and then multiply that by 3, and that's how many times it's showing up that you have to look for evidence of their learning. And all of that is done through our Infinite Campus program, but we can't pull that data specifically out of Infinite Campus because it would be looking, for example, Mark's science test he showed you, it would be like, question 1 is this standard, question 2 is this other standard. So you need an an educational platform that breaks it down by question. So we can look, how did kids score on this science question number 1, beginning, mid, end, 6, 7, and 8, because there's different standards then also for each one of those grades. So I think Kat said 121?
111.
111 total that we would be tracking at the middle school.
I think the other talking about it, just maybe I mentioned this, but I didn't, is the retention. Our kids retaining, and this came up last year, their math. Our math teachers were doing interim assessments 3 or 4 times a year. I think it was every quarter, wasn't it, last year? Actually, weren't here.
Yes.
It was quarterly, but the point was, kids that took it in the first quarter weren't necessarily retaining it at the end. And so this is one of the reasons why we're focusing on it. Like, we're teaching it, but are we coming back to it? If it's that important that it's a priority standard, are they retaining that information or skills?
There's a lot to be thinking about.
I love we've got all this data collection. I think my concern is that the data collection doesn't get in the way of the learning. It's meant to enhance the learning, but, I mean, you hear me say it every once in a while, way in the pig don't make it any fatter. We spend too much time assessing and not enough time reacting to it. Just assessing them doesn't necessarily get us. And if it's too much time, then you got to tell us that, because we're expecting data. But if that's not getting us where we need to be, then we need to do something about it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, you guys are already up here, so, all right.
I'm Lisa Goyle, assistant principal, with Heidi Link, assistant principal, and Kit Lickey, principal, for anybody watching at home. So we were here in March, and we explained a lot of the basis of what we were doing and how we were doing it. So today we're going to lightly touch on where we've been, show you some data on where we are right now, and talk about also where we're going. So as you maybe recall, our WIG at the high school is by 2027, all students at the high school will achieve and sustain mastery of reading comprehension, or will achieve at least 10% growth each year as they progress toward reading mastery. What we did this year was, first semester, we had a pilot group of teachers who created and implemented reading and response activities and tracked their data for that, and then helped roll it out for all teachers in the second semester, where teachers were doing reading and response activities beginning and the end of the term, each term, and also supplementing and supporting that with reading instruction at the high school that we focused on in our professional development, teaching high school teachers, reminding them how do we teach reading at the high school. So that was this year. Next year, we're moving into including more reading and response activities, and also looking at what went well, what did not go well this year, so we can refine what we do, maybe make our questions a little bit more targeted so that they're giving us the data that we want. And hopefully by the end of the 3 years, being able to have not only showing growth and having really good data for that to support what we hope is going to happen, but also have some intervention and support systems set up so that we can continue to work with that. I kind of touched on a little bit of this already. The data we were pulling from our reading response activities twice a term, and also our long-term measures, our ACT, and Heidi will talk about that shortly. Every student, every class, the reading and response activity is basically a passage with about 9 questions that reflect 3 different levels of the ACT levels of questioning. And then our hope was to show growth over time in these activities and find out where are they lacking and where can we support them even more in the curriculum. I'm going to turn it over to Heidi for data.
Okay, so as Kat said, sometimes looking at the data can be a lot. So I have some pieces highlighted just in terms of our growth this year, but we looked at both qualitative and quantitative data from the teachers coming in because this year was like year 1 of implementation, right? So the qualitative data that we got from them was really telling us like what professional development needs that they're going to need for next year and how they felt like it went versus the quantitative data that we'll kind of talk through for some of the pieces here. So in the last time that we were with you guys, back in March, we talked about some of that immediate implementation of the reading strategies that we had piloted and like shared with teachers for those tier 1. During quarter 4, we saw an increase in the number of strategies that were being used and the number of teachers using more than one of them. So that was really exciting to see. The key ones being in activating prior knowledge and key vocabulary. In that qualitative data from teachers, that was one of the main areas that they said they're still noticing like skill deficits for students is in academic vocabulary and just vocabulary in general. A number of teachers on the math team said like we need to quit using baby terms for some of the things and really make sure that we're bolstering students' academic vocabulary. So we saw that being implemented more and more in classes, which was a really exciting shift for us, most definitely. The other one in our social studies and a lot of the other areas, science worked on annotation, but teachers overwhelmingly just said if we're actually establishing the purpose and teaching kids that as that tier 1 strategy, it makes them perform much better or they do better because they know what they're reading for, right? And so for a number of our teachers, just giving them those reminders and foundational strategies, they said was like imperative or very, very helpful this year. As Lisa said, from quarter 2 or first semester to quarter 3 was their first try at it, right? And so from quarter 3 to quarter 4, one celebration we had as an admin team is that we had a 5% growth in the number of students that were actually tested, because for that data I took the number of enrolled seat counts, right, and the number of data submitted for each teacher, and made sure that we looked at that. And so we had 5% growth just in the 1 quarter in terms of implementation, despite having long-term subs in the building for certain people, and shifts in staff. And then we also, when we looked at currently right now, our baseline for the assessments that were created this year, it said that on average, 84% of our students were scoring at proficiency on our WIG assessments. Now, that looks really good on there, but that is a moment of pause for us administratively, because when we compare that to our ACT performance, or the pre-ACT performance, that are scoring way too high. There were a number of staff that reported that students were using ChatGPT or some other things as they were taking it to cheat on some of the assessments. So trying to figure out how we can bypass that, even with that. So there are a number of things that we want to try to refine and have that our teachers are being really reflective and saying we need to bolster the rigor that's going with that and have the match. Because when we look at our incoming ninth graders, like English, for example, incoming ninth graders in English right now in the below 13 score, right? So the lowest score for the ACT, we're averaging between 30 to 45% of our students starting in that range for the practice ACT for below 13. So that is like not representative in that area. Down at the bottom, when you look at like the cohort, so each of those colors shows a particular graduating cohort for class of 2025, so our outgoing kiddos, and then going up to our current freshmen who just had their first assessments on the right-hand side there. And so the scores that are at their bottom, on the bottom are their composites for each of those cohorts on that particular assessment. Now, what you'll notice is the class of 2025 had the sophomore slump, as a lot of like surrounding district administrators will talk about. A celebration that we have for ourselves is that starting with our class of 2026, we have not had a sophomore slump since. We haven't had a dip in the scores since then. We also are trying to look at the longitudinal data and say, what is our growth factor, right? And what are we providing for our students in growth compared to what their predicative score is on the ACT and what we actually have them scoring on. So like class of 2025, when they came in, their predicative score for the ACT was rated about a 20.5 between their freshman and sophomore year, and then it was very close on par for where that was. But with our class of 2026 and class of 2027, you'll notice that we've been having a higher jump between their 10th and 11th grade scores. And on average, we're usually averaging about a 0.5 to a 1 point growth, like as a typical. This year, we have a huge celebration for our class of 2026 though, and that's the part that's highlighted there in yellow, because their average ACT score actually went up by 2.5 points from their 10th grade year at an 18.5 to a 21, which was a huge celebration for our staff. Now, we want to be able to dig into the actual like sub skills, right, in each of those areas and be able to have more targeted time in each of those areas, but looking at it as a whole picture for our staff to be able to say, where are we at, how are we growing, and then this year was really about our baseline, so trying to create what is that foundation and knowing where we need to start and kind of launch from, so higher implementation and fidelity with number of students being tested and bolstering the rigor are definite ones, and that kind of leads us to some of our next steps when it goes into some of the content literacy pieces.
I do want to go back, just because we see the orange, I want to just talk about the orange cohort and the far right just a little bit. You can see again where current sophomores, with the start of a 16.9 in last year's assessment, they're making growth, but we're starting at a lower, if we're looking at things on a ladder, we're starting at a lower ladder rung, and that's a worry for us. One of the things that you'll hear, we'll talk about in the leg side of things and what we're working on this summer is the worry of, we're now very good right behind Nate, I'm pointing at you, sorry. The ACT will predict that we'll be roughly at an 18.5, so if you see that in 25, 26, right? That they'll predict that that cohort roughly will be that. We typically beat the predictor score by about 0.6 to 1.0 or more. So we can consistently think and believe that if we don't do anything at all between now and next March, our students potentially will score between a 19.1 and a 19.6. That for us is unsettling as a leadership team, as an administrative team. In the 17 plus years as an administrator, we've never been below a 20. And so I hope we're back here a year from now that is not what our predictor score is, but we do need to do something more. The struggle, I think, when we look at it, is again, staying really core to our WIG. We know that literacy, again, is going to make a difference, not only in students in all of our academic areas,
but also now kind of, again, honestly, feeling that bit of pressure, right? That little bit of test pressure that we're gonna have to do more than the WIG itself, in our opinion. So as we're meeting and looking at our data here after the school year has ended, as we meet and talk with 25 plus of our leadership team members in July, we're going to try to solve that problem, which is that lagging, this lag number here that we know might show up, that we want to essentially beat beyond that curve, similar to what we beat beyond the curve for our class of 2026. That's a steep road to climb in the 9 months that we have between now and March. And so we're going to look for your input and feedback along with that. We'll talk with our central office team about that. One of the things that, again, we have been, I don't want to say reluctant to do, but we talk about whether it's test prep, working with ACT suites beyond just the March exams. Is it something we need to practice more with our kids or not? Are we at that spot where most districts are in that realm already? And really talking honestly about that as a district, talking about is that what we want for you and us and our board and everyone to prepare our kids for that exam. Besides the WIG, we know that the WIG inherently is extremely important in practicing literacy, practicing ACT-like questions and reading those. But are we going to go beyond that and start talking openly about potentially some ACT prep types of materials that we're going to be exposing our students to coming up potentially into the fall? Because again, looking at where our data is headed, okay, with that particular cohort, and it's not blaming the cohort by any means. You can see again our current ninth graders at about a 17.6. You can go back and look at other predictors. We could go back even in the early pre-COVID and see kind of the same structure of this, that these gaps that we're increasing or that we're actually decreasing and improving our scores are pretty consistent. So I'm again pretty confident that we will get back above a 20 with that current freshman class, hopefully well above that, like well above that if the work we're doing is great. But again, there's this temporary group that we want to make sure we serve better so that they perform at their highest levels coming up in March. Does that make sense? So we've got, looking at the data, thanks to Heidi, thanks to Mary Beth, we now can really get into not only composites, but to sub-scores, to where students are showing patterns of behavior amongst cohorts and sub-scores in math and in English, in our other areas in science, that we can really drill down to it a little bit further. So responding again to our leg data, again, I want to thank both our two assistant principals. They've been great leaders in both interventions and strategies with what Lisa's been doing in helping our teachers understand what Tier 1 interventions look like, what reading strategies look like. They've been doing an excellent job. Heidi has been doing just a phenomenal job leading the data protocols, looking at our data, compiling again 2 tests for 1 kid in 4 classes times 1,000 students. In that takes a lot just to get that 84.32%. It's a lot to look at. There's no easy way to do that, similar to the challenges at Meyer Middle School. And we want to get better at that. And again, thanks to the hard work both of Mary Beth and Mary Beth and Heidi in all of those data protocols. So again, I think what we need to continue to do is focus and stay focused on the WIG. We don't want to deviate because we have a worry of where our ACT score may go or may not go. We're going to stick to what we're doing with the WIG in the literacy and looking at our ELMSS protocol and interventions related to that. We're going to, again, provide greater clarity. Remember, our teachers have only implemented this for 1 semester of our 3-year goal, so we want to stay the course on that and get better at it. One of the things that we're considering when we look at this particular long-term measurement, when you see the reading activity level, we have teachers coming in and saying our kids are doing too well on this end, maybe we do need to raise the bar up, move everything up even more of a notch in terms of rigor on the assessment. So that's one of the things we'll talk about at our data retreat is these first 3 questions that we have, quote unquote, too easy for our kids, that they're kind of throwaways, and do we need to move this up? That'll be a debate when we actually look deeper into our individual student data amongst our cohorts with that. So again, we're trying again to look at how we will raise the bar and how we will continue to do that. Next year again, we're continuing to work with our PLC teams. We will continue to work on those Tier 1 reading strategies. We'll continue to look at tier 2 and tier 3 interventions with our teams and our student services. And again, I think the successes that we have is that we've learned a lot about how we work together in our PLC notebooks, how we work together in our PLC protocols with staff. Our staff are understanding what data looks like and sharing it and looking at assessments. I walked into a classroom, a FIAD classroom, 3 weeks before school got out, and I was asking what kids were doing. They're like, we're working on our WIG, Mr. Litkey. Our kids are even using that language, which may or may not be good, but they know what a WIG is, or at least they know it's an assessment of some kind. So we're really proud of the hard work that our staff have done, really proud of the teaming and the leadership teams that we have. Shout out to our PLC leadership team, our BLT leadership team, and our intervention teams. They're just doing a great job. And again, without these two alongside, none of this would be possible. They do just excellent work day to day. Any questions?
Okay, couple of questions. So one is the ACT scores we're seeing, pre-ACT, those things, that's aggregated data, so that's average, right? It's
We're showing you the composites.
Right, so it's showing the composite. So sometimes these are significantly influenced because at some point, high school's average test scores might be higher because they've got this core group of students who are really high flyers, they score very high, and they pull everybody else's score up. Another high school might have students at the other end score very poorly, and they pull everybody's down. Is this distributed somewhat evenly, or do we have groups like that?
We have groups like the ladder that you mentioned, is that we have a group of individuals. Again, one of the things we have to think about too is, we were talking even today, is like how different is the forward exam compared to a pre-ACT, right? Because when Mark's sharing his 2016 to 2024 data, I'm like, we got to look at 8th and 9th grade. Let's go back even further on these cohorts to see where forward data is and what we can even see from that. Because I'm curious as how often are kids exposed to something like that, timed form of a test that is as an ACT. And I know they're similar in nature, but for answering your question, we have a larger bottom third than we would care to see at this particular point in time, that we have to really have. That's why we're focusing in on some of the intervention strategies that we have to bring that bottom tier up out of the 13 and lower cohorts.
Right.
And it could be in English, it can be in science, it depends on the specific areas of subject.
Okay, because that's good to know, because, and it is dangerous, because if you've got two competing extremes, that's not doing anything for your kids in the middle, and it's throwing off the data. So I was assuming, and I get this, that you're identifying pockets within that you're addressing. One of my fears, and I wouldn't suggest that this is it, but one of my concerns is that our overall curriculum maybe isn't rigorous enough, or maybe not that it's not rigorous enough, but our students may not be as pursuing as rigorous a curriculum as they used to, given factors like, for example, the UW system schools, with the exception of Madison, are admitting 80-90% plus of the students who apply. There's no longer the pressure that was there 15 years ago, 20 years ago, to take more rigorous courses, take college prep courses, which we no longer kind of differentiate. And because it's a curriculum-based test, that typically influences the test scores. So is the pressure off for students to take a more rigorous curriculum, and do we have some of that going on? Again,
Not having it in front of me, but my hunch in working with the master schedule for over a decade plus would be that we still have the same number, if not more, students taking AP level courses. Remember when a decade ago we only had 3 AP or 4 AP classes. Now we're offering 6 or 7 AP classes plus DACP classes plus tech college credit. So I do think our kids are getting levels of rigor. The question I think also still is the one test, the one day, are they honestly taking it seriously enough now, knowing that it isn't as influential or critical as it used to be?
Yeah, that's good.
How to convince a 9th grader to treat that seriously so they have a projected goal to be at their junior year, and creating academic plans around that, or intervention plans, or being pointed of where we need to work on deficiencies is something I think we have to still get better at.
I would assume that an AP course would have a significant impact on their ACT scores. I would not make that automatic assumption on college courses. Okay, they may or they may not, because they're, and not that they're not taught with rigor, it's that they're taught the different standards and those kinds of things. So if they're taking college calculus as opposed to high school calculus, it may or may not affect their score in the same way. So it's an advantage to the kid to accumulate college credits, but it may or may not be impacting their test scores.
And in mathematics, just to give that example, more of it is way less on calculus than it is on geometry and algebra 2 and algebra 1 skills too,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So,
And we have algebra 1 rates similar to what we used to, is there an increase in pre-algebra, lower math, those kinds of things?
I still only have one cohort of it. We now co-teach that, and we're very clear on who we have in there and why. And it is data-based. It's not any gut decisions anymore, or even recommendations. We really are placing kids where they should be in mathematics. So there are little things that we want to dig into more. Remember that what we just presented is fresh with us in the last 10 days and what we've compiled. We're excited to meet with the 20-plus staff that we are having in July again, thanks to your support, to have that data retreat and really boil down some of the great things that we're doing, and then also taking a look at where do we need some really quick, heavy lifting and quick work.
Sure. And handoffs from the other grades to where you're coming, so that, because I mean, the obvious question this year is, so how did we get here? And we can't point fingers because of big problems about COVID and a whole variety of other kinds of things. But it's going to have to be, because you're where all of our students end up. That's I always say that at graduation, this is the funnel where they're all coming from 4 elementary schools to 1 middle school to the high school here, and so it all aligns. But anyway, I was curious about that, and then what's going on at our, and I ask this rhetorically, you don't need to necessarily respond, but what's going on at our peer institutions, our benchmark institutions? Are they seeing a similar trend, or is it just unique to us?
We discussed that as well today, is that we need to dig into that. So everybody at our levels are looking at that data now as it's coming out. We're going to get AP scores in June as well too, that we tap a lot of those same cohorts or comparable schools that we have enough networking between the 3 of us that we can call and say, like, are you seeing some of the same things we are, or are we way off? And we want to look at some of that as well too. We haven't had a chance to do that. Great questions.
It seems like this year you were primarily focused on that tier 1 level. I'm curious to know if you can share a little bit about plans or even current practices, tier 2 and tier 3 development of those types of interventions, where we're at there and serving some of those kids that really need some support.
That was really development this year. So
Okay.
There's a literacy intervention class that one of our teachers is doing, and so really working on refining that and determining criteria. So that was like a big task this year, because there isn't a universal screener at the high school level, similar to what Jerry was talking about earlier. We don't have the forward or anything like that, so it was digging into, where they had been with their forward scores coming in, what percentile they were scoring on with some of the different tasks, and then looking at F reports and things like that for academic struggles. But I know that Lisa's working hard with Becky on that, so.
It still comes down to some staffing and resource issues too, to prioritize, right? So again, we have a language arts teacher that we pull for 2 blocks instead of working in regular curriculum, working as an interventionist with identified students. We pulled back on the math intervention and have now placed it in a co-teaching model at our pre-algebra level, looking at it from a proactive response method. If we know who those kids are, let's put another person in to co-teach and work with those students and really build the foundational skills in mathematics early and often, instead of waiting until we see it, right? In science and social studies, we don't have anything yet, and when we look at literacy as a full goal, there's not a tier 2 or 3 other than the pulling a language arts teacher out who's has a licensed reading specialist to do added work with roughly 8 to 10 kids in 9 weeks. It's the system doesn't allow us to deliver it as well as we would like yet. Both the block schedule kind of plays a role in that, because you can't do an intervention for 80 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That's going to kill that student and the teacher in that, so we have to find better vehicles to create tier 2 and tier 3 interventions.
But speaking to that more, like one of our hopes for next year that we talked about is being really intentional with that win time.
I was going to ask about
And if
that.
each of our content areas is able to identify content literacy focuses, right, and be able to say, in this class, we're focusing on these skills, and then during that win time, hopefully the tier 2, right, would be more during that time where they could pull and support students, and then if that's not working, then to be able to look at some of those additional supports.
A lot of the tier 1, 2 that we went through were are practices that tend to be tier 2 and pulling them into create tier 1 when they're recognizing that several students might have, a deficit in one area, to bring that tier 2 practice in as a tier 1 so it can help benefit everyone. So that was kind of the approach we took. So some of the things that we talk about as tier 1 could be used as tier 2, but that's as far as we've gotten with that.
Thank you.
Two very brief things. The first thing is to say thank you for all of this. It's going to be exciting to see where we go next year with all of this, because this feels like we've started the foundation. The second thing is more of a rhetorical statement, which is to say, when we're dealing with data and we're dealing with students, how do we know that the data is telling us what we think it's telling us? We don't, do we?
I'll try to tell you that, I'll try to answer that next June. I'll write that down, just like, what was the, what is the pig wig thing that you said?
Wait, the pig don't make it any better.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
Oh, no.
All right. Thank you. Yes, Mark, you get to come up next to talk about your wig for student services, please.
All right, well, I brought, oh, no, I didn't bring any. I promise I have friends. I really do. I just spoke to you guys in April, so I'll go maybe a little briefer than Kit. But
Thank you.
Singer.
okay, come on.
Is it turned on?
He might have turned it off. Oh, he did that to you on purpose.
Jeez, Mark.
Did I sabotage it for you?
I think you must have.
It's because you cut me deep.
I can do it. I got it.
Okay. So just a reminder, special education's wildly important goal was that 80% of our students would show above average growth on the, basically measured by the student growth percentile of over 65. That essentially means that a student starting at a particular score, they calculate data and they say this is about the average expected growth that a student starting at this point in time would get, and we want to be above that growth. So that was overall our goal. So student growth percentile above 85 or above 65, which essentially is called high growth. Skip to the next one and the next one. Okay, so this is essentially our end of the year data when it comes to looking at our WIG. And I've got a couple of different columns there. The first column is the average student growth percentile when you took all the students in special ed that were tested. And then columns 3, 4, and 5 really are the breakdown between high growth, average growth, and low growth. This is based on a couple of different measures. You'll see we used Ames Web for kindergarten through 3rd grade. FastBridge was for 4 and 5, and then STAR was middle school and high school. So that first column, the average SGP, again, if you think of the exact average expected growth being a 50th percentile, you can kind of see where those numbers lie right there. So obviously one of the things that stands out is our kindergarten numbers. Those are below 50, which is kind of a question mark for us. That's something that we want to look at a little further. Our other numbers in 1, 3, middle school and high school were all above 50 as far as that average growth. The next column over, you can see is kind of our percent of high growth. Again, our goal here was 80%, and you can see that we didn't quite meet that, or didn't meet that by a lot. So essentially, our high growth numbers, looking at that, 43.8% in 1st through 3rd grade, 36 in middle school, 32.4 in high school. One, I guess, positive, again, not necessarily related to our goal, but if you combine our average growth and our high growth together, we were kind of in that 75% range in 1st through 3rd grade, 64 in middle, and about 70% in high school. So again, didn't meet our goal, but we are showing, some promise as far as kind of our percentage of students that are high growth or average growth. Obviously, the low growth column is a column that, is a concern for us. And I think one of the things that we want to spend some time on is looking at, characteristics of those students, seeing if there's any commonalities, why are those students not growing at a rate that we want to see them growing at. So that will be some important conversations going forward. But that's just kind of a review of kind of where we ended up as far as end year. As I mentioned in prior presentations, this is kind of our baseline. So this is what we're kind of using to say this is kind of what we have at this point in time. And now kind of using this data to look really carefully at, what are some of the things that we do, some of the resources we use, some of the, special education delivery strategies, whether it be co-teaching or, making sure that they're in core and pulling them out for supplemental instruction, providing paraprofessional support and different things like that. And seeing, are there any certain models that gives us more bang for our buck than the others. So again, that's just kind of some of our end of the year data. I think one thing that would be important, you can skip ahead a couple more slides, is really keep going, and one more. Really our 2025-26 planning. And I've covered some of this before in kind of a brief measure. One thing that I think will be really important now that we have some baseline data, we know kind of where we were this year as far as, even fall to winter and then fall to spring as far as those numbers go, is really kind of establishing kind of a schedule of mini data review meetings. I think when we do it like in one big chunk at the end of the year or at one point in time in the year, there's a tendency to not be quite as invested. If we have a series of little mini meetings where we kind of keep after this data and after every screening period, we sit down and we look at, okay, this is what our data tells us, have some guiding questions, and we build that into the schedule, I think that will be really important for our staff as far as looking at that on a regular basis and not just at certain points in time. Having an established protocol for kind of pulling those reports, I think someone mentioned just kind of the whole efficiency in doing that. One thing that was really cool is I spent a lot of time pulling a big report in the winter, and then Summer Bowers at the middle school took that report and just did it in the spring. And so just the ability to just kind of take some stuff that we create, use that to kind of funnel data in so that some of those conversations can happen will be really important. Again, just identification of what's working and what's not working at both the student and the system level. So for case managers to look at their caseload and say, wow, at the caseload level, man, 70% of my students are doing really well, this 30% isn't, why? And then when we take that and we combine that across, like, say, the entire middle school to have those same conversations about, what is it about your reading intervention that's working as opposed to maybe mine that's not working, quite as well. So I think that would be really important to kind of really formalize that data review cycle. So I'm working with Mary Beth and Amy along with building principals to kind of figure out where we can slot those over the course of the school year so we have those regular points in time. So that's one thing. As part of that, ongoing review and evaluation of our current interventions and resources. This was the first year that we did kind of a different reading intervention at the middle school. And I think it rolled out really well, but I think all of our special ed teachers did it slightly differently. So having some different conversations about like, hey, what did you do that was working really well? What can I steal from Julia Johnson? And then, having those different conversations I think will be important. We've had a lot of conversations at the high school about, the special education skills class, how we can continue to use that model to kind of, use or create, academic interventions. And then how can we shift that so we're pushing more students into core instruction and giving them more elective opportunities and maybe using WIN as an opportunity to getting some of those interventions and skills in place as well. So that's another piece of the pie also. And then we talked a little bit about just some ongoing and systematic professional developments as far as kind of reading instruction intervention. We have a lot of new teachers every year, and just having a set protocol for these are kind of the trainings that we want to make sure you get within the first year, the first 2 years. We have our staff coming from alternative backgrounds, and so I think having a set protocol for what that looks like will be really, really important. And then continued structured collaboration for job-alike staff. Buildings like the high school and the middle school are great because you have a lot of people doing the same thing. At the elementary schools, we might have 4 special ed teachers, but one's kind of focusing a little bit more in on behavior, one may be focusing a little more on academics, and bringing those folks together across our elementaries to have conversations about what's working academic-wise or behaviorally in each of our buildings will be important. So those are just some of the goals that we have kind of looking ahead to next year. And along with this, continue to work on the building level goals as well. So like the special ed team at the high school is doing a lot of work on their weekly WIG, readings as well. And so they're doing the same thing with some of those other things, which will hopefully also impact our special education WIG. Questions? Sorry, Kit.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the work and look forward to the next step. All right, superintendent report. This is his final entry plan update.
I want to highlight something that wasn't in the report, that we got some exciting news this week. We had one of our elementary schools be recognized as a high progress school. So that's a school of recognition, and it highlights a school's dedication to student growth. So that's the River Falls Public Montessori. Received the High Progress Award for, the distinction is based on measurable progress in student academic growth and reducing achievement gaps on the most recent forward exam, particularly among students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. So we're super excited for the public Montessori staff with the support of Principal Kai Rogers. They've done a really great job of creating an environment that aligns to Montessori values and demonstrates that academic growth. And that's an indicator of their ability to continue to connect with each student and create systems of support for each learner. So we're proud of that. We're excited. Some of the data points there maybe were a cause for concern. And now we're seeing that awesome growth, and we're excited to see that. So wanted to make sure we recognize that. We'll do some more. The word just got out, but Jenny Ames and I will share that more publicly as it comes about. Okay, so entry plan. So this is the last update that I'll provide as far as the year goes. And again, the vision was really just to have a smooth transition in my first year as a superintendent. Goals were related to governance, student success, organizational alignment, and communication and engagement. And so we're at the last one. There it is. Just to highlight the things under each of those goal areas, within governance, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we did for policy review, and then highlight the Neola approval, which is kind of now the ongoing way that we'll continue that policy work. I'm not going to spend too much time on student success because we just saw the dedication of represented by the administrators, but I know there's a ton of people that have done a lot of work around making sure that a big portion of our meetings is focused on student success. It's focused on the implementation of our strategic plan, and specifically the implementation of our strategic plan around some of our student learning goals. Organizational alignment, just talk a little bit about administrator evaluations and how we approach that. And then finally, communication and engagement, highlight some successes around the listening sessions this year, and then some community and newsletters and e-newsletters. So 86 policies we updated this year. So hear that? 86. Great job.
Nice.
And then,
Mike was here for all of them.
yeah, that's right. And then moving forward.
And away for half, so.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good percentage. There's some people that can collect data on that.
In baseball, that's a good percentage.
And we're excited about the adoption of Neola, which will provide drafting support, allow us to be more compliant and more transparent, and basically create an environment in which how we do policy development will be more efficient for our administrative team, more efficient for people who need to access policies, whether it's employees or whether it's the community. And that is something that most school districts had already jumped to, but we are now excited to move forward with. The only thing I'll highlight was student success. Morning, bright and early. We'll have an admin retreat, and we will review a lot of the elements that were talked about today, involving our wildly important goals, but also elements of our overall district scorecard. If you recall, we created that scorecard to be as closely aligned as possible as our strategic plan, and maybe tell a more broader story of the growth that we're working on beyond just the forward exam or the school report card, which are narrower views. So stay tuned for that. We'll discuss that refinement, and then when we have our school board retreat at the end of July, you'll see those updates. And then organizational alignment, just wanted to touch on the fact that all of the evals for our admin and supervisors are really tied closely to a process in which they're setting personal professional goals, so their own personal development, each administrator and director, as well as goals, organizational goals, the way essentially about how students are doing. Sometimes those are, you'll see those referred to as SLOs. And now our principals, when we evaluate them, there's a very specific DPI framework that's followed And it focuses on the areas of human resources leadership, instructional leadership, collaboration, and school management. For our directors and supervisors, there's no framework, so what we really tried to do this year is align the way we evaluate our directors and supervisors as closely to the way we evaluate our principals. So they set personal professional goals, they set WIG goals aligned to their work. Instead of a statewide framework, we relied on their job description and provided an opportunity for them to go through that. So the next couple of slides just outline that work. It's obviously, it takes a little time to transition, but I've really appreciated the dialogue and growth focus that we've had. And then the last piece is communication and engagement. Over the last couple of months, we completed staff listening sessions. Nate Sherman did a good job organizing that, and we saw improved attendance. And I would say the big thing is, in addition to the quantitative data that we collect through staff, student, and family feedback surveys, these listening sessions really allow for maybe a deeper analysis of feedback from our staff, which we really appreciated. And then the last piece that I wanted to highlight around community engagement that we're really proud of is that each month we sent out an e-newsletter, and the amount of people who received the e-newsletter, either by choice because they asked for it or not choice because we've got their email address, has been increasing, which we're excited about. And then a stakeholder group that is really tricky to have communication with is our broader public, right? If you have no connection to the school district as a parent or a student or an employee, we want to make sure that those stakeholders have some understanding of the work that's being done, and we're proud that we had 2 community-wide newsletters that were sent out, one in the fall and then one in the spring. And we're happy with the reach that provided and hopefully connections for those in staff, whether it's through community ed highlights or other highlights so they understand the work of the district. So we were going to have one more slide where it was like, that's it. No more entry plan. I appreciate the first year, and then the greatest thing about it is that now we move forward and we start this process over.
Thank you. All right, now we are going to move into action items. Before the board this evening, we have meeting minutes from the May 19th regular school board meeting. We have bills that have been submitted for payment. We also have recommendations regarding employment. Is there a motion to approve minutes, bills, and employment as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bo. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, Alan, I'll turn to you for a summary about Ed program, please.
The Ed Program Committee met on June 2nd, and we covered several things. One is we had an update from Luke Chafee, who teaches as a high school social studies teacher, took a group of students to Europe over spring break, and they gave us a presentation on it, and it was just a delightful presentation to see how our students were engaged and how he had some students helping him with the presentation, and it was very informative as well as enjoyable just to hear one of our teachers talk about a program they were doing and the students who were involved in it. So we did that. And then we also reviewed the co-curricular salary schedule. These are the activities that our staff are involved in addition to their classroom teaching. These are activities that they may coach or lead or support or be advisor to or those kinds of things. And several years ago, we decided to index those every year or periodically so that they would go up regularly, so that we weren't constantly playing catch up every 4 or 5 years, that all of a sudden these have to be brought up. So David Crail, our activities director, gave us a presentation on what those would be, and we approved that. In fact, we have that in front of us. I think we'll take these. We have 3 things to act on tonight, so that's one of them. I think about half of us were there. I don't know how many of us were there that night. But anyway, so I would move that we adopt the salary schedule as presented at the Ed Programs Committee meeting for approval.
Thank you. Who said that?
I did.
You did, Lindsay? Okay.
For anybody who wasn't there, any questions or anybody questions or clarification on that? Really appreciate the work that Dave Crail put into that. It seems really straightforward, but there's a lot of nuance and parts to that.
we're going to be more systematic in terms of doing it on a regular basis.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And
Yep, one
so
abstention.
we have 5 in favor. We have no people who are voting no, and we have 1 abstention. So you've got that, all right?
And then we've been doing, in addition to policy review, handbook review, and that's a lot of language issues in there. So we spent, and again, David Creel spent a good amount of time with us walking through what those individual changes are. Off the top of my head, I can't think of some significant ones.
The big one was the bus, how far,
That's
the coach bus was,
150 miles.
yeah. I knew Mike would know right off the top of his head.
Yes.
149.9 miles from Wausau West.
Right. So it's at what point do we
DC Everest.
lease a coach bus rather than one of our school buses? And that was a change, 150 miles. I know there are some larger school districts, especially out there, that get a coach bus lots of times for their students, but they are more expensive. And now we have a policy that relates to that. And a variety of other languages. This is a constant need, sort of keep this updated and watch the language on it and those kinds of things. So anyway, I would move the handbook revisions as presented at the committee meeting that we approved for approval.
Is there a second? Thank you, Monica. Questions or comments?
Any questions about that for anybody who wasn't here or whatever? All right.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried.
And then Mark Inouye gave us a presentation on some changed wording to School Board Policy 342.11, which is the independent education evaluation, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but this is an evaluation which is, if a student goes through an evaluation by the district and a parent disagrees with it, it's their options for getting an independent evaluation of their student in terms of what services they may or may not need. Is that a correct summary?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay, all right. And again, it's just clarifying that so that parents know, staff members know, and we have something to react to. So is there a motion to approve that policy 342.11, independent education?
Thank you, Monica. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bo. Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried.
And then we had our annual Title III review that Amy led us through, and just updates on that. No action required on that. And a summer school update, and things are, in summer school are chugging right along.
We also heard an update on the name, image, and likeness.
Oh, yes, right.
Yep.
And we're going with that.
All right, thank you. So the Personnel Committee met on June 9th, and the 2 information items were to hear a certified staffing update. We were doing well. We added 1 more resignation at the time. Could be that we get some more over the course of the next weeks. We also received a report about Advanced Learning Grant Awards and the history on that. So those were good conversations. And then the action items before the board this evening would be to approve the seasonal school bus driver detailer job description and then set an hourly rate for that position. That we are hopeful that we would be able to find somebody who would be willing to do that work for us. We also, as a committee, recommend that the board approve the 2025-26 employee handbook updates. Nate did a very nice job going through and did some rearranging, some clarification, all things to match what the practices are that we want in the district. And then we approved the teacher substitute pay incentives, hoping that we're able to increase our fill rate for the substitutes. So, is there a motion to approve the seasonal school bus driver job, or driver detailer job description?
So moved.
Thank you, Rylan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lindsay. Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Is there a motion to approve the 2025-26 employee handbook updates?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mike. Ellen? Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. And then to approve the substitute teacher pay incentives. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Lacey. Second. Thanks, Bo. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried, and I will turn to you, Mike, about financing facilities.
Okay, we met on June 9th. We had a good meeting. We talked about the first item on our agenda was the facility project update. First of all, the tennis courts are getting close to completion with the anticipation they'll be ready for our fall season. Our girls play in the fall, and we're hoping that they'll be ready to go for them at that time. So that's exciting stuff. Our project, if you've been over to the high school campus in the last few weeks, there's a lot of activity and there's a lot of work going on. So we have a lot of different things going on with our mechanical. We're getting our electricals roughed in. Our plumbing is getting roughed in. We're having all of our concrete work is being done. So that's kind of that's where we are in the project at both the high school and at the bus garage. So a lot of kind of things inside the building, getting those buildings buttoned up, and the windows are in and the roofs are on, and so there are a lot of the inside work that needs to go on is happening. At the high school, we have a pretty major project happening with the gymnasium. We're removing the existing bleachers in the main gym. We're replacing those, and so I was there last week, and they were starting to take those out. We are looking at the fire alarm replacement throughout the building and beginning to actually repair. We're going to do a pretty major repair on the gym floor at the high school as well. So things upcoming at the high school, we're working on the sprinkler layout and the rough ends for that. We're going to finish installing some of the CMU in the walls, continue with the kind of mechanical things happening, the rough ends and electrical stuff being done. We're going to be putting in our new door frames. We've cut walls, and the existing exterior wall, we cut the holes in it that we will be using to access the new part of the gym and the multi-purpose space. So that was the first item on our agenda. The second item was talking about our budget. Budget is at the end of the year. Our budget year ends on June 30th, and so there's always this process at this time of year. We're just kind of getting finalized some of the numbers that we have with our special ed funding and our state support for that, and some of the other things in our budget. Things like, an example would be things that were in this year's budget that are going to be actually delivered after the 1st of July, and so we have to kind of move some funds around within the budgets and within our accounts to make sure that we have the money there while it's in this year's budget. It's actually being paid for next year's budget or next year's fiscal year. So just some of that maneuvering that happens every year is happening now. We had a good discussion on the special ed reimbursement funding. The focus from the state legislature was on high cost aid. Not necessarily on the general aid, which we are currently getting 30% or 30.6% on. I think there was just an update on that this week, right?
Right. It doesn't appear as though there's going to be a lot of movement on the special ed reimbursement rate. I think there's going to be a small adjustment, but essentially the indicators are there. They're looking at more funding of the high cost claimants,
Which doesn't really have a lot of impact on our district. Very close at 50,000 over the last.
Virtually nothing. Virtually nothing.
Right, right.
Yep. And so that's a much more specialized need as opposed to a broad need of increased special education costs.
Right. And so we're at 30.6%. It kind of gave us a breakdown as the ask was really 60%. And what the impact is on us is for every dollar we don't get in aid for special ed, it comes out of our general fund. So that's money we then cannot spend on other educational programs for our students. So special ed funding is a challenge across the state, and it's the way they fund it is difficult for districts, but because they're asking us or telling us we have to do certain things with our special ed population, but they're not funding us to help support those. So that was the next item.
Mike, one additional thing on that. The budget hasn't been approved yet, and we still don't know when we're going to have a state budget. But this was the Joint Committee on Finance resolution, which probably will not be changed, but it's not totally a done deal. So if anybody still wants to contact our local legislators, there's still some chance. But it looks like maybe just a couple % increase on that special ed aid, and that's going to help us, and we don't want to complain that we're not getting anything because we're getting something. But the larger issue out there is our general aid. We're supposed to get an automatic, how much per student?
$325.
$325, right? But the committee has voted no state support for that, so all of that will come as a property tax increase, so.
So the 325 is the increase in our revenue limit, which is split and shared, and it's a unique scenario depending on what district you're in. However, all we're allowed to do is increase the revenue limit by 325, but the pot of equalization aid or state aid that funds that side of that is remaining essentially the same. So that means any increases will be on the levy side.
So what I picked up at a webinar I attended on Wednesday, and then I've been picking up in other media accounts, is there will be an increase in state aid for education, but if this goes through. But because of that, over 70% of the aid will simply be property tax increases, not state aid in terms of what we would think about it as. So what that means is, because this initial bill also contains over $1 billion income tax cut, increasingly, and this is not the first time we've seen this, income tax cuts in the state simply mean property tax increases at the local level. And it's the point where it's concerned, and I'm hearing that phrase more and more from people who it's just dawning on them, wait a minute, I'm getting our income tax cut at the state level, isn't that cool? But your property taxes, are being eaten up. That's eating up that you're getting. So I think it's important for people to think in those terms, and when they're talking to their legislators, thinking in those terms. It's great we're getting an income tax cut, but by doing that, it's increasing our property taxes, and there's a big difference. In my mind, property taxes are a much less equitable way to tax our residents in the district. So it's not a totally done deal, and we are going to get more state aid, so we don't want to be looking a gift horse in the mouth. But it's the way in which it's coming in, how long it's taken, that's kind of been driving us crazy. But it is what it is, and we're getting better than nothing, I guess.
So do you want to add anything else about the budget revision?
Yeah, Lynette, anything specifically you want to highlight on that? So it's something that happens every year. We need to make revisions that doesn't change the bottom line numbers and so on. So it's a balanced budget, and nothing has changed there, so.
And we went through it carefully.
And we did, we reviewed it. So I'll make a motion to approve the 24-25 budget revisions.
Second.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried.
The last thing on the item was just the property and liability insurance renewal discussion that we tabled to a future date. So other than that,
We just
good
weren't
meeting.
ready for the conversation.
Right.
Yep. All right, before the board today is a motion to approve the 2025-26 support staff supervisor salaries and the 2025-27 administrator contracts. If you remember, our administrator contracts are 2 years. The increases will be 3.57% for supervisors, 3.23% for administrators. Just as an aside, that is a lower total salary increase than our teachers and support staff are receiving.
And it's an average? That's the average increase, so.
And this would be our last group, and then all of our contracts are settled. So is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Monica. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. We talked about this extensively during the closed session of our last meeting. All right. And now we have a series of second readings before the board, and unless anybody has anything they would like to pull out, my intention is to take numbers 2 through 6 together in one motion, and to take number 1 separately, because I'm suggesting that we add one more sentence that is still in keeping with the spirit of this. I don't think that it changes, that this would be the second reading. But currently, The only places that we reference being respectful and so forth would be in the negative, in terms of that the presiding officer would be able to stop comments that are not respectful. So my proposal is that at the end of the first paragraph, we add one sentence that says, "Speakers' comments must be respectful and observe the decorum of the meeting." So that we're saying very specifically that that's what our expectation is in terms of public participation.
Need a motion?
Yep.
I'll move that we approve it with that revised.
With that, thank you. Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, the motion is carried. And now before the board, we have the second reading of revised school board policy 341.1, early literacy program, revised school board policy 345.46, third grade to fourth grade promotion and retention. The second reading of revised school board policy 1.1, selection of instructional materials. Second reading of revised school board policy 361.2, selection of library media center materials. And the second reading of new policy 361.2, this would be the rule, procedures for selection of library media center materials. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, I would like to move to.
Thank you, Monica. A second. Thank you, Bo. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. Do we have any items for future board meeting agendas? Other than the things we already know that will be coming up. All right, then we're going to schedule meetings. The educational program will meet Monday, July 14th at 6. Finance and facilities will meet Monday, July 14th at 7, or immediately following educational program. And because this is our triple header, personnel is going to meet Monday, July 14th at 8, or immediately following finance and facilities. The next regular board meeting will be Monday, July 21st at 6. The school board retreat, everyone remember, will be Monday, July 28th at 5. And in conjunction with that is our tour starting at 4. Is that right, Lynette? 4 o'clock is our tour of our referendum buildings. And at this point, I would like to have a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 1985-1C, which permits convening into closed session for the purpose of considering the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility to discuss the superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Monica. I need a roll call. Monica?
Yes.
Yes. Lindsay?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I say yes.
Yes.
Ellen? We're in closed session. Thanks.